Greetings and salutations. My name is OJ as always, and welcome back to another episode of the Deadlockathon, a series of videos where I go over every single character in Valve's not so secret hidden game, Deadlock. I'll be going in alphabetical order from Abrams to Yamato. I'll be covering their lore and personality, their gameplay and abilities, as well as their design. Please do keep in mind that everything is subject to change at a later date, because that's kind of just the nature with a game like Deadlock that is still actively in development. And if you yourself wish to play Deadlock, I'll throw up my Steam name on screen, and all you have to do is subscribe, and I'll give you a code. Not really, but hey, it's a good plug, right? You gotta admit that's a good plug. But anyways, with all of that said, our object of obsession for today is a sheriff from a small town, hunting down none other than the troubadour. Her name, Holliday. That was a little bit cheesy, that was kind of a cheesy intro, but that's besides the point. As I like to do in all of these videos, I would like to start by discussing her lore, aka just reading her in-game background, as well as, mentioning some little tidbits here and there. Now, before I talk about her background or read it off, I must mention that Holliday actually has a visual novel in the works. Some of you may know that Oathkeeper and Lady Geist have a visual novel that has some pages revealed, but otherwise is still a work in progress. These visual novels are going to probably be used to give us more information about the characters and, tell us some of their backstories, etc, etc. Lady Geist's is the one furthest along because it actually has, images. Holliday does also have one though. However, hers is only, voiceover. So we do actually know a little bit more about Holliday than we do most of the characters, and I'll mention bits and pieces about her. But with that said, her in-game background reads as such. There are people who spend their whole lives dreaming about moving to New York. Holliday isn't one of these people. Content with being a sheriff in a small town, Holliday enjoyed a career where the only time she had to use her gun was when trick shooting at the county fair. Then the murders started. Grisly and inhumane. The bodies were found with their rib cages ripped open, their innards picked apart as if by birds. Holliday tracked down the killer, travelling folk musician that the media dubbed the troubadour. But when she confronted him, he exploded into a murder of crows and flew away. That was 6 months ago now, and while the murders in central Illinois have stopped, Holliday's investigation has not. She believes that the troubadour is travelling to New York, and when she finds him, she's gonna kill that evil son of a bitch. I think Holliday has a lot of similarities to another character in the cast, that being Grey Talon, a character kind of consumed by the revenge and desire to track down a group or a singular person in Holliday's case and kill them. Them two do actually have a few voice lines together, and Grey Talon does, funny enough, reassure her that her quest for revenge is not one that should be looked down upon, and one that she should continue down the path of. Whereas some other characters, say like Mirage, says that her hatred of the troubadour and her revenge quest will blind her till it's too late. So there's some characters that agree with what she's doing and some that don't, and a lot of people that make fun of her for being, girl from the smaller city in the big city, the usual trope, like, how do you explain that? I don't know, she's obviously, cowboy sheriff from a smaller town, a rural town I presume, whilst going into New York, the big apple as they call it. Not that I'm from America. I think it's called the Big Apple. I think that's the name for it. But either way, there's some other stuff that there is about words. They're really difficult, aren't they? There's some other stuff about Holliday that I feel like I should mention. And the most important part is that she's actually the granddaughter of the real world Wild West gunslinger Doc Holliday, who, if I click on this Wikipedia link and read a little bit, is best known for his role in the events surrounding and his participation in the gunfight at OK Corral in Tombstone, Arizona. And he was a dentist, gambler, and gunfighter. So, that's a real world cowboy that she is, the, granddaughter of, which I think is actually quite a cool idea. And I'll mention it later, but her gun that she uses, her revolver, is actually inherited from her grandfather, which is why it's called what it is called, which of course I'll mention when we get to that. But some other stuff and bits and pieces about her is that she had a sister at some point, However, it is implied that she was murdered by the troubadour, which actually makes her revenge quest not so much a, like a valiant crusade, like she's trying to fight to save or avenge the lives of those innocents that were murdered. Like, she probably is, but I feel like the fact that her sister may or may not have been killed by the troubadour has made it very personal for her and made her revenge quest, it's more personal than valiant per se. And she has at many times said that she doesn't like big cities like New York or Chicago, and I didn't know this one, but apparently she has been married more than once, which makes her, is it Ms. Holliday? MS? I didn't even know that. I think that's kind of neat. But some other little tidbits, some tiny tidbits that end off this section or end off the lore section, I'll talk about her personality in a minute, is that this links into personality. She does not like and antagonizes outlaw characters like Wraith and Yamato, gives Wraith a warning about her casino and saying that once she's done with the troubadour, she's going to go for her next and stuff like that. And I don't know, there's personality-wise, she's a very serious character, which makes sense. She's obviously on a revenge quest. She doesn't have time to mess around and play jokes. She despises Lash. I don't know any of the women in the cast that don't despise Lash, honestly, because he's just a knob. He's a knob, and that's all I have to say about him. Funny enough, though, she does seem to have, someone does actually have their eye on her, that being Infernus, who actually mentions that he would want to go on a date with Holliday. Well, indirectly says that through one of their interactions. And just for those who are curious, she is voiced by Melanie Minicino. I think that's how you say that? Milicino? I know her from nothing. You can look up her IMDb page, but I literally know her for nothing. I think she was in Persona 5 Strikers, but I do not like that game. I am never going to finish that game. I really don't like it. But, pardon me. Holliday is a serious person, right? She's a very serious character. Doesn't joke too much with other characters. She seems to be quite fond of characters who work kind of, government-esque jobs. Like, she's, fond of Abrams, who is a detective. And she has a sort of link to Hayes through the visual novel. But of course, work in progress. We don't actually know fully how that turns out, but blah, blah, blah. And yeah, Holliday is kind of, I don't know how to put it, but I've not really ever had super duper strong opinions on her. She's kind of just a whatever character to me. It almost feels like she's kind of like the resident cowboy character. I don't know. Personality-wise, she's fine. She's serious. She has a few funny lines here and there. And I will play a line between her and Calico in a minute, because I think that dialogue between the two of them is quite interesting. But yeah, she's a very kind of character. I don't really feel super fondly or negatively around her. She exists. Her gameplay's fun, but of course, we'll get to that when we get to it. But otherwise, I don't really feel super strongly about her. I think she's neat. I'm sure, though, of course, work in progress, and as we know, she's getting a visual novel. I'm sure the visual novel will probably help me warm up to her a lot more. Pardon my throat. But, as I mentioned just a second ago, I'm now going to play you an interaction between Holliday and Calico, just to show off her voice work, because I do think it's, solid work. And it also reveals a little bit about the troubadour, kind of. I'm sure, as most of you may know, Calico is a very aggressive woman. She will take on any job for assassination stuff, and she used to be part of the Baxter Society, which is obviously a group that hunts down monsters. And the things that she says to Holliday intrigue me, because it makes me think, Holliday, you probably shouldn't be going after the troubadour. But with that said, the interaction sounds as such.
Rumor is you were in the Baxter Society.
I was.
You ever hear something called the troubadour?
Enough to know to stay away from it.
Yeah, I just think that interaction is really interesting, because it implies that Calico knows about the troubadour, but knows enough, as she says, to stay away from it. Which intrigues me, because what is the troubadour? How scary is this thing? I mean, to our knowledge, all it's done is kind of kill people and open up their chests. With Calico, someone who was in the Baxter Society, fought all sorts of monsters, has taken on all God knows how many assassination jobs, is staying away from the troubadour? Yeah, it's probably quite a threatening thing. I don't know, Holliday. Do you think your revolver can do that? I'm not sure. But yeah, I think Holliday is a fine enough character. She's kind of just whatever to me. I just don't feel super duper strongly about her. But yeah, her voice actor does a decent job. Most of her lines are fine. She's a very fine character. I'm sure some people, obviously, again, once we get the visual novel, I'm probably going to like her way more because we'll know more about her and I'll be able to connect with her more. But yeah, I think she's fine. But with that said, we now move on to her gameplay and her abilities. Just keep in mind that when I do gameplay and ability recording, I use OBS to record my audio and gameplay simultaneously because it allows me to show and tell simultaneously. So I do apologize if my audio quality is a little bit weird. And funny enough, I actually recorded the gameplay segment before I recorded this segment because of some circumstances stuff at home. So if I forget to mention things or say here, oh, I'll mention this later and I don't, that's why. I don't think I have done that, but either way, you get my point. I hope with that said, we move on to, or with all of those disclaimers, we move now on to her gameplay and her abilities. Right, so here we are in the ever so helpful and ever so lovely training range to talk about Holliday's gameplay. And to start, let's talk about her gun, that being Doc's orders, which of course is a little nod to her granddad. This gun is pretty simple to explain. It's a revolver. It's like a traditional revolver. We're not talking shotgun revolver like Abrams has. It's a normal, simple revolver. Has a relatively okay fire rate, has a relatively long reload time, which isn't really mediated anywhere in her kit if I remember rightly. I could be stupid, of course, but hey ho. And it also, I'll get to this ability in a minute, but it also does, you know, good headshot damage, of course. It's solid. It's fine enough gun. It's quite good in lane because its projectile speed is very quick. It's not, no gun in this game is hit scan. I've said that a few times in these videos. The only character who even comes close is like Bebop, but even Bebop, he has to like wind up his gun before he can start shooting. But yeah, Holliday's gun is, you know, good, simple, fine enough. It's got, as I said, very quick projectile speed. It's practically hit scan, practically. It's not actually hit scan, still has bullet travel time, but basically hit scan. But it's, you know, as again, it's solid gun. But it is incredibly important for an ability that, as I said, I'll mention later. But with that said, the first ability she has is known as Powder Keg. You throw a barrel that explodes after a delay, dealing spirit damage and applying knock-up. The barrel can be detonated early by being shot, meleeed, or detonated by another barrel. You have one charge at base, it has a 6-meter explode radius, a 32-second cooldown, and a 3.5-second cooldown between charges. It takes 0.5 seconds to arm, so you can't just like throw it and shoot it immediately. It does 80 spirit damage at base, and the duration of the knock-up is 0.4 seconds, and that looks as such. You kind of just throw out like a barrel that has a little lighter on the end of it, and it'll keep going. It goes on for quite a long while until it actually does just decide to explode. Actually, it goes for like really far actually before it decides to explode. What the shit? Like, look how far it's got it will go for quite a while. But as it said in the description, if you shoot it at any time, it will explode immediately. It also explodes on contact with enemies. And as you can see, it doesn't really knock up the dummy very much, but it's still, you know, a knock-up of some kind. I don't know if that's because it's the dummy. No, yeah, it just doesn't really knock up much at base, I believe. I think it does knock up more later. Yeah, it does on its third upgrade. But yeah, this ability is, you know, it's useful. You can use it in lane to kind of hit multiple, like, minions to kind of, you know, do some damage to them. It's good to use as poke in lane. Like, say, for example, say this is your lane, right? You're fighting someone and they're hiding, like, right behind this pillar right here. You can throw a barrel and it will bounce and you can shoot it and it will obviously hit them, knock it up. Or knock them up. It's also a key player in spirit builds for Holliday, which Holliday is a character that can kind of go for both, which is good. She can do spirit and have all of her damage come from, you know, her barrel, or she can go gun build and, well, we'll get to how she does a gun build in a minute. But, pardon me, the barrel is, you know, solid. It's a very solid ability. It's got a lot of kind of odd mechanics to its trajectory. Like, if you were to throw it against a wall, for example, it kind of just... I didn't even know it could do that. Why did it just go up the wall? Yeah, the barrel's kind of weird when it comes to trajectory and stuff like that. Like, I'm not really sure how this barrel works, actually, trajectory-wise, but I'm sure there's some really, really stupid shit you can do with it because of how it moves. Like, it should not be able to do that. It should not be able to just climb over a fence. But yeah, it's a solid ability, and it does play well with the rest of her kit. That's the important part. It works well with the rest of her kit. You kind of can use it no matter what build you use. Like, it'll be your main damage dealer if you do a spirit build, but if you do a gun build, it can obviously help by, you know, that was awful, by knocking people up and then giving you a chance to kind of shoot them. But either way, on its first upgrade, the cooldown is reduced to 22 seconds. On its second upgrade, its explosion damage is increased by 65, bringing it to 145. And its third upgrade increases the duration of the displacement by 0.4 seconds, bringing it to 0.8 seconds. And you gain 2 charges, putting it at 3 charges total. And the extra displacement looks as such. You kind of knock them up a little bit higher, giving you, you know, more chance to hit them and the such. And the extra charges is, of course, very helpful. You have a 3.5 second cooldown between charges, which is not bad whatsoever. But yeah, the powder keg is a solid ability, decent, works well with the rest of her kit, and enables multiple different playstyles through its just existence. But her second ability is known as the bounce pad. It has a 22 second cooldown, a 41 second duration, and you drop a bounce pad in the world that launches any hero, including, of course, your allies or enemies. You explode on landing, dealing spirit damage to any nearby enemies. The explosion can only occur once per bounce pad. The stomp or explosion does 80 damage. The radius of it is 12 meters, and you get 100% extra air control when using the bounce pad. And if you have multiple charges on it, the duration between, or the cooldown between charges, is 3.5 seconds. And that looks as such. You place like this little orange pad down on the ground. If you step on it, you get sent into the air, land, and you can do explosive damage to enemies. You have quite a lot of control when in the air. Like, obviously, if you just held, like, just for example, right there, I was just holding S, so backwards, and you will just kind of stop. And notice that I don't make a second explosion whenever I launch myself that time. But if you moved forward, like, you know, you get some decent travel time. And if you're in the air, like, you have way better control than you would say otherwise. And here's a fun fact about it. You can launch the barrels, and they'll explode immediately on impact, which, of course, can be quite useful. Oh, look, there's Infernus over there. Bang. Right? Like, you can use it to launch the barrels into the enemy's, like, areas. Like, say, for example, as I was saying earlier, say we're in lane, and I'm having to fight behind here. I can then launch a barrel, and then it will land, explode, and, you know, potentially hit enemies behind cover. The bounce pad is also, of course, a good movement tool to get away from enemies. And, you know, if you're good at aiming, you could maybe even shoot a few pot shots whilst you're in the air. But, of course, you can also jump in the air and throw the barrel. Like, the bounce pad also works well with the rest of her kit. It all kind of synergizes. The bounce pad works with the barrel works with the bounce pad. And yeah, it's a solid ability, decent enough. And of course, it could do quite respectable damage because it does scale with spirit, which, you know, it's always good. But on its first upgrade, you reduce the cooldown of it to 31 seconds from 41. On the second upgrade, you and allies gain a 4 meter per second movement speed bonus for 4 seconds on landing. And on its third upgrade, you do an extra 75 stomp damage, and it improves its spirit scaling, which, of course, helps with, you know, doing more damage. And it does 155 damage, I think. I don't know, it's gone up a little bit for some reason or another, but that's besides the point. But that extra movement speed bonus, because I have to show it, looks as such. Land, and then you get this like little blue trail behind you to show that you have a extra movement speed. If I remember rightly, you can actually launch minions? I'm not really sure if you can. I think you can. Maybe? It's worth a shot, right? Like, but no, right, it's not gonna work. Can they get launched? I have no idea if they can get launched. If they can, that's kind of funny. Like, come on, please. Why would you walk around it? Anyways, I'm not sure if it can launch. It launches any hero, I guess not. But it'd be funny if you could launch them. Like, can you imagine a combination of Bebop and Holliday have just Bebop put a bomb on one of the minions and then have it get launched by the bounce pad. It could be kind of funny. But yeah, it's quite a good ability. It allows you to get around the map better, gives you extra movement speed when you land, does respectable damage, and synergizes with the rest of her kit, allowing you to throw powder kegs further distances and throw yourself into the air to fire some pot shots. And speaking of shots, we have her third ability, Crack Shot, which has a 20-second cooldown, and headshots deal bonus damage and apply a fading movement speed penalty. This effect can only occur when off cooldown. Cooldown is reduced by 50% on NPC hits. Crack Shot ignores ranged damage fall off and does not apply to objectives. It does an extra 55 damage. I think it's 55. It says 57, but I think it's been increased a bit because I killed something. The fading movement speed The fading movement speed penalty is 50% or minus negative 50%, and the debuff duration is 2 seconds. And that's, by the way, what this glowing effect on the end of her gun is. This sort of yellow glowing effect is to show that Crack Shot is available to use. And as you saw earlier when I shot the enemy in the head, you get like this sort of click sound effect when you hit the headshot, and you'll be shown that it did the extra damage by this sort of, you know, circle special flutter thing on them, and as well as the movement speed penalty with the negative arrows going downwards. And to show that movement speed penalty, admittedly I am going to have to hit my shot, which of course I hit the shot as he runs around the corner. But yeah, you can see the sort of slowdown in effect. Now this ability does, if I remember rightly, also scale with spirit damage, but because it does gun damage on the initial hit, you can build gun. And if you build gun, you can do a lot, and I mean a lot of damage. However, of course, as per the name of it, or as per the description, you do need to hit your headshots, which can be a bit chaotic or hard to do in the chaos of Deadlock's gameplay. So, but it's funny that the two characters that require, not require, but, well, okay, Holliday requires headshots to be, like, good. Hayes can kind of get away with not hitting her headshots and doing, like, really, really good gun damage, but if Holliday's not hitting her headshots, she can kind of suffer, because the headshots just do so much more damage. Look, 25 damage on a body shot, 102 on a headshot with Crack Shot up. Like, you get my point. You kind of need to be hitting your headshots, and she's probably one of the most mechanically asking characters in the game. How would you put it? Like, she requires a lot from you, like, game-wise. Not as in, oh, you need to learn Holliday and you can only be good at Holliday, but you do need to know how to aim. You need to understand how to aim. I mean, if you're good at Holliday and knowing when to use bounce pad and use your powder kegs and trajectories and all of that shit, that does obviously help. But if you can't aim, you can't use Crack Shot, and a lot of her damage comes from Crack Shot. So, I mean, I showed it again. 24 on a body, 126 on a headshot. It does a lot, right? But either way, on its first upgrade, the fading movement speed buff is increased to minus 75%. On its second upgrade, it increases the damage by 55, bringing it to 110. And on its third upgrade, you reduce the cooldown of the ability by 4 seconds on hero headshots and 2 seconds on NPC headshots, which of course only furthers the point that you need to be hitting your headshots even when Crack Shot isn't up. Because obviously, as it said, if you hit your headshots on your targets, when Crack Shot is down, Crack Shot will be back up quicker, allowing you to do, like, you know, the extra damage sooner. So, like, just as an example, let me just buy some of these items from this build that I have here, right? Let's just buy crippling headshot, silencer, friendly, lucky shot. Like, this isn't a good build per se. Like, I've just bought a bunch of offensive items and absolutely nothing else, and these are all obviously optional items. But if I shoot them in the body, 79 damage, shoot them in the head, 343. You see the difference? Like yeah, you understand. Like, if I just, let me just dump 5 bullets into his body, right? I know he's obviously got the armor reduced, but 99, 167, 264, 363, 553. Now, what if we dump those 5 bullets into his head? 336, 692, 1027, and so on, so forth. You see my point. you need to hit your headshots as Holliday, otherwise she will just perform worse. Just flat out, she'll just be worse. Holidays who hit their headshots are always going to be better than ones that can't. And I feel like I've made my point. So, with that said, we move on to her ultimate, also known as Spirit Lasso, which has a 2.25 second duration and has a 115 second cooldown. You throw out your lasso, dealing spirit damage, pulling and applying a stun. Using a bounce pad extends the duration of Spirit Lasso. And as I said, the stun duration is 2.25 seconds, its cast range is 20 meters, and it does 100 damage on base. And I'm going to sneeze. Bless me. I do all these recordings without any interruption, so sometimes I have to cough and sneeze. That's the first time I've sneezed during a recording. But anyways, Spirit Lasso looks as such. You kind of wind it up for a little bit by swinging the lasso right next to your hip. There's a ring around you to show where it can go. And if I were to hit an enemy, I yank them towards me and they kind of get dragged around with me whilst I, obviously, you can't do anything when you're lassoing someone. So think of it like a single target Dynamo ult in a sense. Dynamo can obviously pull everyone in, stun them, and kind of keep them all together. Whereas Holliday can obviously hooks, like kind of, yeah, it's like a Roadhog hook in a sense. You kind of just hook someone out of the team fight and kind of keep them next to you, and it allows your teammates, of course, to, you know, just dump their mags into them, kill them. And as it said, you will do extra, you'll increase the duration if you bounce on your thingy, your bounce pad. So if I hook him again, you'll see you get like a little extra burst of time whilst they're lassoed. But yeah, this ability is, you know, it's a solid enough ult. It's not like the craziest in the world. Like, it can obviously, you know, get you a pick, but it requires the coordination of your team, which is not something you're always going to have. Like, yeah, it stuns them, pulls them, and it can actually stun enemies out of their ultimates. So you can, like, say, for example, lasso 7 and get him out of his ult. Or you could lasso, I don't know, anyone else who has to fly to use their ult. Like, if you're sneaky enough, you might be able to lasso Mina, if she's not looking at you, of course. Who else could you really, like, lasso out of their ults? I don't know. You could... Does Abrams get unstoppable? He does on cast. You could lasso in Bebop. I needed 3 examples just to make myself happy. But yeah, this ability is pretty good. It does require the help of your team, though, to really get some value out of it, because it doesn't really, like, give you the opportunity to kill people. Holiday's a character that kind of wants to play at a longer distance, so having enemies right up close and personal with her does sometimes hurt her. I mean, if you're good enough, you can obviously fight people up close and personal, but she does, as it says with, like, Crackshot, it ignores the range damage fall off, so you can deal max headshot damage even from, like, miles away. So you would preferably want to be further away. But, of course, the lasso is meant to help your team get a pick by having you, you know, have them stunned and the such. But on its first upgrade, you increase the damage to 175. On its second upgrade, the duration of it increases to 3 seconds. And on its third upgrade, you reduce the cooldown by 30 seconds, bringing it down to 85 seconds. And that doesn't really change my thoughts on the ability. Like, even a lot of abilities obviously get, like, huge buffs with upgrades. So, for example, Crackshot with its -4 cooldown on hero headshots when it's on cooldown. But Lasso just kind of gets buffs to keep it stronger and to have it be used more often. Of course, you can use it to make plays, blah, 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 said all of it. But, I don't know, it's kind of it's not lackluster. It just kind of feels like a weakish ult, but Holliday can make up for it with, you know, like, spirit damage, headshots galore. Like, of course, that looks a little bit more extreme with Crackshot, but you get my point. Holiday's ult is kind of just a tool to help the team, I suppose. I don't know, her ult's always felt a bit lackluster. I don't know how to put it. It just doesn't do as much, and there's abilities that do what hers do better. Like, just for example, I think Lash can obviously get everyone together and just chuck them all together. Dynamo can suck everyone in and stun them. Like, I don't know, her ult just feels a bit lackluster, but I'm sure someone in the comments will, you know, tell me or correct me on something I may be missing. But with all of that said, I would like to now smoothly transition to talking about her design. Now, what do you want me to say besides she's a cowboy? She is a cowboy. I don't know what else I need to say. I mean, she's a young white woman with sort of brown, fluffy hair. She's got, you know, the jacket with fur collar and the sheriff badge. She's not a cowboy, she's a sheriff, right? Got to remember that. She's got the sheriff's badge. She's got, like, you know, cool belt with, I presume those are bullets in it. They're not very model. Well, no, they are model. It's just because she's kind of like facing a different direction. Yeah, like she's got, you know, bullets on her waist, on her belt. She's got a holster for her gun, cowboy boots. I mean, what else do you want me to really say? I find it odd that are those tassels? I think they're called tassels. I find it kind of cool that the tassels are pointed outwards. Makes her look like she's wearing like Hermes' boots. I'm sure some of you know what that is. And if you can hear my dog barking, I do apologize. Muffled, but still. She's obviously got the cowboy hat, even though she's not a cowboy, right? I do like her sort of scarf. I find it odd though that she's wearing a scarf. I wouldn't think that her, like, I don't think it's that cold to be wearing a scarf, but the scarf is a cool piece of, like, you know, not iconography. It's a cool design choice. I like that, as you can see when I'm running around, the scarf kind of like follows me and flips around. I like the sort of physics it has attached to it. She also does have her powder keg. Is that what it's called? Yeah, powder keg attached to her back, which is to obviously make a show of where on earth she pulls it out from when she, you know, throws it out. The only disappointment I really have with her design is that, you know, it's a work in progress like the rest of the designs, but it's that her gun just doesn't have anything on it. Like, her gun just doesn't have a texture. This is like a basic revolver model with no texture. I can't wait to see what her revolver actually does look like. I mean, even if they just put, like, textures on this, I'd be happy. But yeah, Holliday's design is fine. It's okay. It's fine, whatever. It does its job. She's a cowgirl. Blah, blah, blah. Nothing more to really say besides that. But with that said, this is the end of the video, and hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, like, comment, subscribe if you feel so inclined. Have a lovely rest of your day. Good evening, good afternoon, morning, etc. Good evening, afternoon, morning. Yeah, that works. And the next video in this series is going to be none other than the fireman himself, Infernus.